Hey guys, how are you? Hope everyone's having a good day today. But today I'm going to be telling the story of this beautiful little girl behind me, and her name is Breanna Loveless. So let's get right to it. This is the story of Breanna Loveless. Warning, viewer discretion is advised. Breanna was born on May 22, 1995 in Delta, Utah. Her mother was Bobby Darn Whittison and her father was Rick Sanders. They dated only for 3 weeks shortly after she moved to Delta. Bobby wasn't happy that she learned that she was pregnant. After Breanna was born, she lived in a small apartment with Bobby and her 2 other siblings. In November 1995, Travis Whittison began living with Bobby and her 2 daughters. The mother had known Travis for years and they soon became a couple. Neither Bobby or Travis worked but were home together most of the time. Prior to January 1996, Breanna had been generally healthy with the exception of recurring ear infections. Breanna regularly visited her father Rick and her paternal grandparents, Claude and Maridine Sanders, who often kept her overnight. On January 12, 1996, Breanna went to visit her father and grandparents. Miss Sanders and Rick became alarmed when they saw Breanna because her face was so bruised and she had a bad sore under her nose. Fingertip-sized bruises covered her forehead and both her cheeks, and the nose sore was so bad that Breanna couldn't drink out of a bottle. Miss Sanders and Rick took Breanna to see Dr. Stephen Shamo, who prescribed an ointment for Breanna's nose sore. Dr. Shamo, at the time, particularly wasn't troubled by the bruises. However, Miss Sanders contacted the Division of Child and Family Services before taking Breanna home. At this point, DCFS does pay Bobby a visit, and when Bobby finds this out, she was enraged, and Miss Sanders would later confess to Bobby that she was the one that called DCFS because she was concerned about her granddaughter. Bobby claimed that the bruises were caused by Breanna lying on toys or on her bottle. Bobby then told Miss Sanders that she would never see her grandchild again and ordered her to bring Breanna home in 15 minutes or she would have Miss Sanders arrested for kidnapping. Miss Sanders immediately took Breanna home. This visit was the last time Rick saw his daughter alive. On January 30th, Bobby took Breanna to see Dr. Shamo to have him check on Breanna's cold and look at several new bruises on the baby's body. Dr. Shamo noted that the bruises on Breanna included one on the right side of her forehead, a raised red mark on the back of her head, a lesion above her left ear, and 3 diagonal parallel red marks on her back. Bobby claimed that Breanna got the bruises by becoming trapped between her crib mattress and its railing. On February 7th or 8th, Bobby and Miss Sanders had offered to let her see Breanna again if Miss Sanders would pay Bobby's electric bill. The Sanders paid the $126 bill and gave Bobby an additional $20, and on February 9th, Miss Sanders picked up Breanna for an overnight visit. This was the first time that Miss Sanders had seen Breanna since January 12th, and Miss Sanders was shocked at her appearance. Breanna was listless, had visibly lost weight, and had bruises all over her arms, back, and legs. Soon after Miss Sanders noticed the bruises, Bobby called to explain that Breanna's bruises had been caused by her being caught under the crib mattress. That night, Breanna did not play as she usually did, and she could not pull her full weight on her legs. After Miss Sanders took Breanna to her home, Breanna seemed very uncomfortable and whimpered a lot. Breanna seemed so miserable that Miss Sanders did not change her into her PJs that night, but removed only her pants and left her with a pullover shirt. When Miss Sanders removed Breanna's shirt the next day, she saw that Breanna's shoulder was red and swollen. Miss Sanders took Breanna home and told Bobby that she needed to take Breanna to the hospital to have her shoulder looked at. After some delay, Bobby took Breanna to the hospital where Breanna was diagnosed with a broken collarbone. The attending nurse noted that Breanna's body was marked with multiple bruises in different stages of healing on several areas of her body. The hospital notified DCFS. A caseworker arrived to investigate. Bobby claimed that Breanna must have broken her collarbone when she was stuck in her crib or while she was at her grandmother's house. The caseworker allowed Breanna to go home with her mother and understanding that DCFS would monitor her home twice each day. This was the last day that Miss Sanders would see Breanna alive. On February 21st, Bobby took her other 2 children grocery shopping in the afternoon while Travis and Breanna stayed in the apartment. At the store, Bobby became angry with her other 2 children and loudly verbally abused the children for 20 minutes in front of a cashier. That cashier heard Bobby yelling at her children, saying that she was going to be arrested in the store for child abuse because she was going to fucking kill them. That night, at the apartment, Bobby and Travis gave Breanna medicine for her cold at about 9:30 or 10 p.m. Having put the children to bed, Bobby and Travis left them alone and went next door to play video games. Bobby returned to the apartment sometime between 10:30 and 11 p.m. to check on Breanna. Shortly after midnight, Travis went back to check on the children and found Breanna was not breathing. Travis immediately retrieved Bobby from next door. Bobby called the emergency services while Travis performed CPR. Deputy Sheriff Brett Nilsson arrived at the apartment at approximately 12:20 a.m. on February 22nd. He immediately noted several bruises on Breanna's forehead and a red mark under her chin. He checked for a pulse but found none. The baby's body was cold and hard, and her chest was rigid. Breanna was transported to the hospitals where doctors determined, based on the condition of her body at that time, that Breanna had been dead for approximately 2 hours before she arrived at the hospital. Later that morning at about 2 a.m., DCFS caseworker arrived at Bobby's apartments to take the other 2 children into protective custody. Bobby became upset and said that she would kill herself if the other children were removed. She became hysterical, saying, "If you fucking beat my baby, then I'm going to fucking strangle her." And I went to the bathroom and effing played with myself and had a effing orgasm. Bobby then threatened, "If you take my other 2 kids, there would be another murder here." At this point, no one has suggested that Breanna had been murdered. Bobby and Travis were charged with Breanna's murder with various counts of child abuse. At Bobby's trial, a jury would hear evidence from 3 state experts, all who testified that Breanna's bruises could have not been caused by being caught in the crib, as Bobby had claimed. Both of those doctors believed that Breanna's injuries were intentionally inflicted. Then all 3 experts testified that Breanna had suffered several broken bones, including her broken collarbone, fractured arm, and a fractured leg. The fractures to Breanna's arms and legs were likely caused within 2 or 4 weeks prior to her death by someone forcefully grabbing and twisting them. The numerous bruises on Breanna's bodies is in various stages of healing, were the size of fingertips, and suggested that someone had either forcefully grabbed, hit, or pinched her. Breanna also had a number of injuries on her nose and chin and inside her mouth, likely caused by a bottle or pacifier being repeatedly forcefully pushed into her face. The skin connecting Breanna's red ear to her scalp was torn, indicating that someone had forcefully pulled her ear, ripping the skin. At the time of her death, Breanna suffered from a diaper rash so severely, ulcerated the parts of her skin were completely missing. The testifying doctors agreed that the rash was so severe, would develop only from a child regularly being sit in a soiled diaper for 6 to 7 hours at a time. That doctor testified although the immediate cause of Breanna's death was pneumonia, the numerous traumatic injuries inflicted on Breanna contributed significantly to her death. Both of those doctors testified that multiple non-accidental blunt trauma was the direct cause of Breanna's death and that her death was clearly a homicide. Her witnesses would testify to Bobby's mistreatment of her other 2 children. There was numerous times where the other 2 children did suffer from broken bones under the care of their mother. There was also witnesses of how she would shove the pacifier forcefully in their mouth if they would cry in the middle of the night and they wouldn't stop. She would also pinch their face also to get them to stop crying. The 2 younger children would testify, but only behind CCTV because of their ages. They were 6 and 7, I believe. And they would say how their mother would beat them repeatedly with a belt often. A pathologist would later testify that Breanna was suffering from battered child syndrome, which refers to a child being suffered multiple repetitive inflicted injuries at the hands of the caretaker. That doctor testified that Breanna clearly fit within the diagnosis of battered child syndrome and that Breanna's injuries were inconsistent with Bobby's explanation. The jury would convict Bobby of murder of her infant daughter as well as several counts of felony and misdemeanor child abuse. She was sentenced to 5 to life in prison. The jury convicted Travis Whittison of 1 count of second-degree felony child abuse and 2 counts of a Class A misdemeanor child abuse. A judge would also dismiss the murder charge against Travis. He would serve 5 years in prison. Rick Sanders praised the verdict, but he said that he felt empty inside. Alrighty guys, that's it for today's video. That was the story of Breanna Loveless. May she rest in peace. You would also might be able to find her with the Sanders name, which is how she's listed in her gravestone. But I hope you guys take care. Remember to make good choices, and I will catch you guys on my next one. Bye guys. Love you.